What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of The Design Therapy, your creative community and outlet for all things inspirational, experimental, and finding that artist within. I'm your host, Cassie Patterson, a creative designer and brand strategist in Nashville, Tennessee. And on this episode, we're talking all things getting your hands dirty in mixed media art, music. Please give a warm welcome to benmoon.
Thanks so much for having me, Cassie. I'm excited to be here and talk about art with you. There's nothing I like to talk about more. So,
how are you doing these days?
I'm doing well. Things are a little strange, obviously, as everybody knows. But just kind of taking it one day at a time and enjoying things and trying to make time to create and do the things that kind of keep me sane. So I think meditation and creativity for me are very important, so I try to work those into my schedule and just kind of taking it one day at a time.
We're already well past halfway through the year now, so I think we're on the home stretch now.
I hope so.
I hope so too. Me too. Well, let's just jump right into it. Tell everyone who you are, what you do, and a little bit about yourself.
Okay, my name is benmoon. As you said, I'm a mixed media artist. I really dabble in a lot of different things and enjoy kind of creating new ways to put different modalities of art together. So my thing I've been doing the longest is drawing and painting, which I've done from the time I was basically the first thing I can remember doing is drawing. It just came very naturally to me and it just made me very happy, and that was my little happy place, comfort zone from the time I was a child. But we also, I grew up in New York. I was the oldest of three brothers. So my parents were very cool. They always had a lot of music of all different styles and times and genres playing in our house when we were growing up. And music was also a really big part of our experience. So I played guitar and sang, and my other brothers played drums and keyboards, and we had our little band that we would.
That's awesome. I love it.
So, we had a lot of fun. My parents were definitely children of the 60s, so we didn't have a lot of high technology in our house. Computers, video games, and stuff like that didn't come till much later. So we really had to invent our own fun using our imagination. So for me,
which is the best way, I feel like it cultivates such a true artist.
I think so. I think that was a really nice thing now that I look back on it. I would literally construct my own worlds, on paper with paint and drawing and just creating music. And it was a really nice way. And then, I now use technology a lot in my artwork, but that was something that kind of came later. And I kind of just use it as a tool to kind of help me kind of bring forth those ideas, from inside my imagination to the world where everyone can experience them. But for me, primarily, it's always been about just kind of very analog, creating, blueprints and stuff on paper with a pencil. And that's where it all starts for me. So that's kind of how I got started, but I kind of kept going from there, and I keep just adding on my journey. And I'm very inspired by the things that kind of happen around me in my day-to-day experiences, and we talk more about that.
Well, you have such a conceptual viewpoint on art and like where you're drawing from society and things that are happening. Like, where do you kind of start to hone in on who you are as an artist in that respect?
For me, the world around me has always been a very interesting, source of information, obviously, for everybody. But I think where that really clicked in for me was not till I got to college. I had this amazing professor, and the first assignment she ever gave us, like when we got to class, was to kind of create a big portfolio. And anything that we kind of came across in our day-to-day lives that was visually interesting or thought-provoking or just even funny or just made us feel anything, we were kind of either to take that physically and put it into this portfolio, or if that wasn't possible, to capture in a photograph or some way to document that experience and put that into the portfolio. And we kind of kept building that up over the semester, and eventually it just became this sort of biographical kind of story of the things that we came across in our daily lives that had some sort of impact on us emotionally or, in some way. And I thought that was such a cool assignment that I kind of have kept doing that ever since. And that's a big kind of impetus for the way I create art. I still just create, like, anything that I come across in my
You
day
like
that.
to push boundaries. I love that a lot of your artwork pushes people past their own comfort zone.
Yeah, I think that's important. I think I the art that I really like is kind of something that, it doesn't have to be any particular medium,
Mm.
just something that for a moment just makes you step back and shakes you out of that like
Yeah,
mundane
jarring. Yeah.
everyday reality that where we just sort of accept everything in this zombie like way. And if it can make you say like, wait, what am I looking at here? Is this art? Is this something else? Like, I
Yeah.
can't put this in a category. It's sort of somewhere in between like the categories that I have already set up in my mind. I think that's when art is at its best. So I
Mm.
try to do that, when I can. I think
I think you do
just.
an exceptional job. Like I love your work that it literally makes a person step outside and be like, that kind of makes me uncomfortable, but I really like want to know more and look at it and study it and really observe like why am I? It starts to make you question yourself and some of your beliefs and boundaries and ideas.
I think that's like I said, like the best art, it makes you not only consider the art, but that's just a stepping stone to looking back at your life and saying, oh, wait a minute, now that I'm thinking about this way, it's sort of weird that I like don't think about that aspect in my own life, and why do I just do this without thinking about it? So
Why
it's
do you make
sort
an
of,
assumption to kind of follow the crowd when
yeah,
typically you don't naturally think that way?
I think it's meant to be a mirror that like helps us actually see our own lives, from a different perspective or context. So I really like it. Ooh, sorry about
Uh-oh.
that.
The arts has its own mind of its own. It's like, I'm taking over.
I think it's just this Lion's Gate that's open today. It's very
Yeah.
energetic day.
We'll have to see what piece that is in a second later on. When we'll have to take a tour of your studio at the end of the video.
Yeah, that'll be fun. I think it was something I just put over the window to keep the
Oh,
light from being too
never
overwhelming.
mind.
So
Never
hopefully
mind.
it won't be, but yeah, I think.
Well, what was like a first piece that you actually like? What was the thing that you started drawing when you were young? So you said that you started young when it came naturally to you. Like, what was the first medium that you started in?
Well, I was very always into the human figure, and it's very cool. My mother still saved all these drawings. I don't have them with me, unfortunately, but a lot of my drawings from kindergarten and nursery school. And the teacher used to write notes home to her saying how like I don't understand how this 3-year-old kind of has such an advanced, they have like the muscles and
The
structure,
composition, yeah.
people from different perspectives, and the ones that are further away are small and things are in the foreground. And she was kind of very surprised. She said, this was very unusual for such a young child to be perceiving the world visually in that way. And I think that was, something I've always, so I had a lot of drawings of figures. And, when I was a kid, I was into sports and, army stuff, like a
Yeah.
lot of young boys are. So I used to actually draw like my own sports teams with all
Oh
the different
my gosh.
guys on the team, and I have like their like statistics and stuff.
But did
Or
you name them all?
yeah, they were all, I completed, these whole imaginary teams,
That's
or
awesome.
armies full of all different guys with different like weapons and powers, like comic book superheroes.
Hmm.
Um, so that was kind of the stuff that I was into, but they're very regimented and funny. Had the opportunity to look back on them when we were like packing our stuff a few months ago, and they're just really funny. That like the workings of my young brain were kind of just as weird as they are now, if not weird.
I love that. So it's just always been a part of you in every aspect of your life.
It has, and I kind of have a certain kind of way I see the world that's kind of from a different perspective than most people. So that's always come very naturally to me. So I just have a funny take on things that's a little kind of off center.
Yeah.
So
I
I had
think
to like
when I
run
was
with
younger, I did the same thing. I literally would draw but because I was so isolated, I grew up on a farm, I would
Mm,
draw like Pocahontas and all
mm.
of my Native American friends out in the middle of nowhere by myself.
It's so interesting and so similar to me too, you know.
I didn't
Yeah.
have a lot of people around me, so it's like my
Mm.
environment really affected who I was.
Yeah, it's almost like creating your own like world around you, and you know,
Yeah, I had a lot of imaginary friends. I named all the trees in my backyard.
it's awesome.
I
Yeah,
did.
that was a, you know, that was a thing that has been useful to me kind of, you know, throughout my life. You know, there were other times in my life where I was again kind of isolated from society or reality for different reasons. You know, I had a very bad car accident actually when I was around 20 years old, and I was in the hospital for months and months. And then even when I got home, I still was bedridden for really another several months. So it was almost a year that I was totally just, you know, out of commission. And that was
Yeah.
a time when I was able to kind of revisit that same kind of way we talked about going about like creating in my childhood. And I just sort of, as soon as I was able to do anything, the first thing I did was start creating art again. And, you know, just to make the world around me just the kind of place that I wanted to be in. And I, you know, it was very helpful to me and sort of brought me back from where I was
Yeah.
back into the world in a way that, you know, felt more comfortable to me. So it's been a real, you know, good tool, you know,
Mm.
throughout my life.
So I know for a lot of artists, we've experienced like burnout and, and not feeling like getting to a point where we don't feel like we can create. How do you combat that? Like, you do this as a living and you're doing it full time. Like, where do you find your inspiration every single day to keep going, and keep trying to inspire yourself to create something?
Yeah, I think that's, you know, for all artists, that's definitely something to keep in mind. And, you know, I think we have to be really forgiving of ourselves and, you know, the world. And the more we kind of like combine, you know, our creativity with the world of commerce and deadlines and demands, you know,
Hmm.
that forces us to adhere to a certain schedule. But,
It's
you know,
more
as
money
far as
driven instead of creative, expressive,
exactly, so, you know, I mean, that can sort of force that burnout sometimes. And sometimes
Yep.
we just have no choice. We've got to get this thing done by this deadline, and you know, just got to suck it up even if you're feeling however which way on that day. But I
Hmm.
mean, from a pure, you know, on the larger sense, I think, you know, that's something that all artists kind of go through. And I look at it almost, I like to use the metaphor of like almost farming or growing. You know,
I
if
like
you just
that.
if you try to just force, you know, like grow, maximize your crop yield like over and over again on the same piece of land, eventually like the soil becomes depleted of its nutrients and you end up with nothing. So I think, you know, there's a process of going through a very highly creative period where you're kind of outputting a lot of stuff, and you know, finishing that and bringing it to a sense of completion takes a tremendous amount of energy. And you know, I think when that part's done, I think like as artists and really all people, I think we have to actually respect that
Yeah.
level of energy that we put forward and give ourselves a little time to just, you know, let the field like regenerate, let the nutrients come back, maybe plant a different crop that like uses
Yeah.
different things, you know. So you know, continuing with that metaphor, it might mean, you know, walking around in nature or doing something that doesn't necessarily have to do with the creative process per se,
Mhm.
and just letting, you know, our energy and our psyche just
Yeah.
regenerate. And then we'll be ready to kind of, and you know, sometimes for artists that's uncomfortable
Yeah.
because
Letting it be for a second.
yeah, we value, you know, ourselves sometimes based on, you know, what we create and our ability to create and our ability to generate these ideas on a constant basis. And if they're not there for a second, or you know, we don't know what to do with ourselves, it's very unsettling. And
Mm.
we might, you know, be tempted to question, you know, do I still have it? Like what if I can't, you know, what if that was the best thing I ever did? And, you know, I'll never reach that level again. And all that stuff is natural, but we just have to be really patient and just trust the process and really just let things come as they will. And, you know, those ideas will start flowing. I mean, all artists aren't this. For me, sometimes I have too many ideas, and
I love
I
it.
have to I have to discern
Yeah,
which ones are more doable and possible within the time and energy of the 24-hour day, and my life as it is right now.
yeah,
So for me, sometimes that's also a struggle. I
yeah,
want to do this and this and this, and I end up doing nothing because I kind of do a little of everything. And sometimes it's better to just have the discipline to hone in on a certain thing
hmm,
and then move on. So they're both, it's a balancing act. It's just like everything else in life, just too far in either direction
yeah.
leads to trouble, but just, the middle way, as the Buddhists say,
Yes.
uh, is, will keep you
I'm
on the
all
best
about
way.
balance as well, everything and every like aspect, and talking about that and being able to step outside of your, stepping away from the artwork. I know for me, like I have to go and walk every single day for an hour outside. If I don't, I am like not a happy person. I can't, I can't make you anything else. Like I'm done. Like I don't want to do it. So like, what is your routine? Like you said that you meditate a little bit. Like, are there things that you do to help you just kind of like step away in that process?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little weird, obviously, with quarantine and things starting to open up again, and we're sort of in that in between phase, so it's hard to know, what the future will bring. So, but within that, I think it is very helpful to me, at least, to sort of have a few regimented things that sort of
Mhm.
create a sense of balance and order. So, Audrey, who my fiance, we
Fabulous.
yes, who's also a great creative person in her own right with photography and
hmm
lots of things that she does. We definitely meditate. We make it a point to meditate every morning,
hmm
um, and that just sort of helps to set the tone of the day.
Yeah.
Try to limit our social media intake. Um,
Amen.
for either certain time periods,
Yeah.
or but to just have that phone right there and just keep
Turn
looking
your
at it
phone
over and
off.
over again. I really think I think as a society we're becoming more conscious of the downsides of what social media can do, and
Yeah.
in a way I think it's just almost designed to find out what gets us all riled up
Yeah.
or agitated or fearful, or all different things, and like constantly like get a rise out of us. So it
Yeah.
really can be very unsettling to keep going to that. I mean, I really, the more I meditate, the more aware I become of my own state of mind. The more aware I become of how every time I just look at Facebook, like I actually feel my vibration lowering to this like state of like this divisive, like
Or it
very
raises your anxiety level. Like I have to eliminate it. I was like, sometimes I wish that we lived in the 90s again, where we didn't have technology. And remember when we were just would go places without even like having to worry about who thought what, when, where, and the freedom with it, And I said, like, I went on my walk this morning. I had to have my routine. I was like, it was setting my day. I went for an hour walk outside, and then just turning my phone off. Like I'm not going to look at it until tonight. Like
yeah. I think it's so important, and I mean, I have friends that get mad at me because when I'm in the studio and I'm working, my phone is somewhere else,
like
and
you were fine when we didn't have cell phones. Like you're fine now.
I don't know. I mean, it's funny, like the idea that just somebody can get in contact with you anytime, anywhere, and
It's
expect
anxiety driven.
that
It's
you're going to stop everything you're doing and just immediately respond to them. I think that needs to be revisited a little bit.
You should
there
make an
there
art piece about that, about like all cell phones and technology. I mean, unless you've already have one in the works.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely touch upon that in a lot of things, but yeah,
Like a
it is
full on
an
like
interesting idea, yeah,
technology invasion.
for sure. So yeah, I think that's a big part of it, just limiting that. And then also we go for walks in the evening. It's pretty hot down south, as you know now. I mean, it's been nice the last week,
Memphis is
but
hot. It is. It's
yeah,
like,
yeah.
a
So,
good 10 degrees hotter than here.
we wait for things to cool down a little bit in the evening, and we go for a really nice walk. And we're lucky where we are. It's it's comfortable. There's like a nice amount of people around where, there's people walking, but you don't have to be right on top of each other.
Yeah.
So,
You don't have to be like, get away from me, COVID, get away.
yeah. I know, like, people in the big cities, that's, not possible. So
It's hard. Like I have a greenway, about 5-10 minutes from me. And even that gets crowded sometimes, but like finding like routines and like going around in neighborhoods and stuff, like avoiding people.
Yeah. So, I mean, our neighborhood is like, so nice. Everyone has horses. So
I
we have
know. I see the horses. What's the horse's name? The white one.
we don't know, and we're gonna have to name them ourselves.
You just go up to the
We
random
go there
horse?
every day, and this horse knows that we have carrots every day. So he just hears us coming, and he looks up, and he comes galloping over,
Oh my
and
gosh.
he's so excited to see us. So that's one of our like nice things we do every day.
You're going to
And
have to go talk to that neighbor and be like, what is your horse's name? Because it comes and visits us every day.
but we're scared because we don't want it to be like, stop feeding our horse. I'm sure it's okay. It's just
No,
carrots.
I'm sure it's fine. Yeah. I mean, it's in like more suburban area. Like,
It is, yeah.
yeah.
Our other neighbor's dog, every time sees that we're walking, comes running up and goes on a walk with us. So it's like a whole bunch of different animals.
Yeah.
So we hang out with the animals, and
It's the
nice.
vibe you're putting out. It's attracting a good vibe.
Yeah, I think I can relate to them more than some other people that these days.
I understand, as artists, I feel like we're in like such a different sector sometimes, at least 80% different than the world.
Mm, yeah, and it might fluctuate from day to day. So
It might fluctuate depending on how we're
there.
feeling or how we're receiving and being receptive to what's being put out there. We'll be like,
Definitely.
yeah. I love that. Well, tell me a little bit of what are some of your artistic influences? I know you have such like a mixed medium of different things that you incorporate into your artwork. Like, where are some of the influences that kind of cultivate you in your work and your process? Are there people or genres of things or cultures or anything specific?
Yeah, I'm influenced by a lot of different things. I mean, the stuff I've been doing lately, I mean, a lot of people kind of mention Jean-Michel Basquiat because it's got a very kind of, I do a lot of layering with like,
Mm-hmm.
kind of a lot of the mixed media pieces. They have,
Yeah.
some of the found objects of collage that we spoke about before, some stuff that I find in my life that I think is funny, or, labels of products, or, just
Mm-hmm.
different things that like strike me as interesting. So I kind of work those in and layer that with paint and kind of build up this surface. And a lot of times, some of the collage elements are like layers, like only a tiny fragment of that will end up being visible on the surface of the piece. But just the idea that they're in there and
Well, and
they're
the
part of the
texture.
story, it almost, to me, it's like an archaeological dig where you kind of uncover the different like strata of the, and you can
Yeah.
see all the different cultures and activities and actions that took place before that told that story.
Mm-hmm.
And like the final layers where we're at this moment presently. So I like that idea of the process. So I mean, I like the way Basquiat did that. I love Van Gogh. There's some lesser known artists that really inspire me. There's an artist called Friedensreich Hundertwasser, who's an Austrian artist that
Okay.
I learned about him in college. I had another great art history professor who was from Austria, and he was friends with this guy, so he introduced me to his work and gave me some of his books and stuff. He works primarily in watercolor, but he's also a multimedia artist who kind of his ideas originate on paper, but they come off the paper and meld into his life. So he built a boat, his own boat, that looks like his artwork, and it's all,
Yeah.
the sails are all colorful, like, and
Oh my
painted,
gosh, I love
and he
that.
sails around the world. And he's into very eco-friendly stuff, so he's built houses and designed towns
Yeah.
and that are very eco-friendly, where the roofs of the buildings are covered with grass, and if you look at the town from above, it blends completely into the landscape, and
Wow.
their own like kind of irrigation and stuff that are all like nature based. And he's very about creating an artwork and an aesthetic that combines with the world and is not a parasitic relationship to
Yeah.
so he's been very inspiring to me. I've tried to kind of extend that, like use the canvas as just a jumping off point. And, a lot of my favorite art too, it kind of straddles that line between the world of representation,
Mhm.
which is, traditionally, the 2D world of, paintings and drawings and images, and into the 3D world, which is like, the world that we inhabit. And I
Mm.
think things that sort of go into that two-dimensional space, but then extend into our quote unquote real world is a very
Mhm.
interesting place to be. And technology is also sort of kind of lending itself well to that, with like kind of the augmented reality that people
Mhm.
are starting to develop for
Experiential design. Yeah.
exactly, yeah. So I think that's sort of where like art is heading right now in general,
Mm.
kind of blurring that space between the traditional world of representation and the real world, and kind of blurring the two together.
Yeah.
So artists that kind of are exploring that are very interesting to me. But I'm also influenced by, like Bruce Lee's book that he wrote about Jeet Kune
Everybody,
Do.
everybody loves him. Like he is such an icon.
Yeah, I mean, just this idea of, I love his quote about being like water, and because, you
Mhm.
know, when something slams into water, from a high altitude, it can be as hard as a rock and destroy everything, or it can be completely flexible and just find the cracks and just, be bend and just go through anything. So it can be anything it needs to be in
Mhm.
any given situation and take the form of different things. And I try to do that in my art. I try not to stay too dogmatically within one genre or one rule system. I just try to keep my mind open to, whatever works best in any given situation. And whatever that is, I go with that and just see where it leads, and, do it that way, instead of trying to like be like, well, this is how, the proper way to do this, do that,
Yeah.
you know.
I mean, that it's such a clear distinction between a lot of artists. I know there's like such a mathematical way to do art, and then there's such a free flowing way to do art. And I come from more of a mathematical side of art. Like, I mean, I did do free flowing art when I was younger and drawing and stuff, but like Piet Mondrian and Swiss design, but I'm in like more of the graphical sense. So it's so interesting to see like there's so many different spectrums that you can
Yeah.
kind of pull from and kind of evolve and be more fluid with.
It's true. And I mean, it's interesting because when you see, the finished product of my artwork, it looks very regimented, and, it's like a million little, like, very precise things fitted together in such a crazy, very, like, weird way. And, for me, I guess I am sort of, I do have a side of me that's like a control freak and that needs, this
That
to
space needs to
take
be
all these chaotic
filled.
elements of the world and like fit them into a very like neat, framework. And that probably speaks to my, desire to control the uncontrollable world around me. So for me, sometimes it's, I force myself to leave a little open space in there,
Yeah.
or, break that, regimentality with a, with just a big energetic
Yeah.
splash of paint, and but for me, a lot of my favorite pieces that I've done and pieces that other people do, I think they have both sides of that, and
Yeah.
it takes one to really feel the effects of the other. So to
Hmm.
create like kind of a sense of tightness and control, and then to break that with something very expressive is very dramatic, or vice versa, to have a lot of open space and then an area of very high concentration and intensity. I think to have both, it really opens up, the piece and the spectrum of, what we can feel, the register of
Yeah.
the emotionality of the piece. So
You reminded me like of like to get me. I don't know why I just thought of this, but I thought of you, and I'm gonna challenge you. I mean, maybe I've already done it, but when I was getting myself out of like such my gridlock mathematical like graphic design, I would literally just paint with my hands without a brush and just paint the entire thing with my hands and my arms.
That's awesome.
So
Yeah, I
I
love
forgot I used to do that. Have you ever done that? And just so like, have you done something so extreme, being like, I'm not allowing myself to use the specific thing that I'm comfortable with. I'm just going to take it, remove it, take it away, and then develop something differently and use a different tool.
I really do like that idea, and I try to do that on a lot of different levels. I use my fingers a lot when I paint. So
I love it. It just feels natural.
sometimes I actually force myself to do stuff with I'm a lefty, but sometimes I'll actually, especially if there's text or writing words or something, I actually force myself to use my right hand just as, a different approach. And I feel really uncomfortable, and I
Yep.
sort of, so that's one way. But even in my whole process as an artist, you know, I usually start with an idea of something that something a problem I'm working with, or something I'm trying to work out, or something I'm trying to get at, that needs to be addressed through my art, for me.
Yeah.
So I'll start out with a certain idea, and I'll take that as far as it can go. And then, like at a certain point during that process, something else just comes through in my mind. I don't know where it comes from, but just a completely different idea that just has absolutely nothing to do with the thing thought
Yeah.
I was doing. And I've just learned through trial and error to
Mhm.
just force myself to do that,
Yeah.
whatever, even though it makes no sense at the time.
Yeah.
And that usually happens, maybe 2 to 3 times throughout the process of like working on a piece.
Mm-hmm.
And in the end, I see why I did the things that I did, even though they made no sense to me at the time. So it's like my brain, I think the brain, like, only like is good for making sense of things that have already happened in retrospect, and like
Yeah.
creating a story to tell ourselves. But I think like the gut really has more to do with making decisions in real time and just feeling stuff through intuition. And I've really, after it's finished, a lot of my favorite pieces that I've done, I look at those elements in it that was like, here's where I did a 180 right here and then there and added this. And it's like, oh, I see what this piece really meant to me and what I was getting at. But I had no idea when I started. And
Yeah.
what I thought I was doing had nothing to do with
And your
where I
brain's
went.
like 10 steps ahead, and it's just, and your gut is trying to express that in the moment and trying to tell you in the process.
Exactly. And all the things that end up looking like, wow, like how could anyone ever think of like this crazy idea or putting this together with that? It's just like
Yeah.
all those good ideas come from that process,
Mm-hmm.
and they make sense in retrospective, and my mind is able to comprehend them later on. But in the process of it, the thought has like, almost nothing to do with it. It's almost telling me what it wants.
It's futurism,
And
basically.
yeah, I'm just letting it like, I
Yeah.
try to like keep my own crazy impulses and thoughts about what things should be. Almost the more I can minimize those and take them out of the way, it's like getting yourself out of the way. The more I just open up to just letting, myself be an instrument of the universe, and, let the piece and the art and the information just come through me,
Mm-hmm.
like from that realm into the world of, like we said,
That we can see.
the world that other people can share this
Yeah.
information with me. So that's
Oh,
really, the process that I try to adhere to as much as possible.
that's such a cool process for sure. I love it. Well, tell me a little bit, like, I love to ask this about everybody and everybody that comes on the series. Like, what would your dream project be? If you had unlimited resources, unlimited connections, anywhere in the universe, if you picked a different planet, cool. Like, what would your dream project look like in a sense for you?
Well, I have a lot of reoccurring dream. I almost never remember my dreams except when I have these few reoccurring dreams, and I don't know if they're dreams or visions, but they're very clear, and I've had them over and over again. There's a few different, I mean, I sort of consider these artistic ideas that I'd like to like pursue, and the technology
Yeah.
allows. But there's one that I've had again and again, and it's very it involves me performing in like almost a concert hall like venue,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm playing an instrument that sort of looks like one of those big church organs from like
Mm-hmm.
the
Yeah.
Renaissance, where almost the entire building is almost structured around this massive instrument that is creating this sonic environment in the whole like building is like a vessel, like a
Mm-hmm.
healing vessel for this sonic frequency that's affecting the people that are experiencing it inside that space. Except there's no sound being generated. Everybody in the audience has a neural link thing on their head
Okay. Yeah.
and I mean, in this vision, this dream, we basically used like reverse MRI imaging to kind of analyze and like reverse engineer the emotional impact that
Uh,
each frequency that's played like has directly on the brain,
yeah.
so that the different keys of this instrument actually just directly trigger like emotional responses inside the cortex of the
I love that. That is so unique. It's such a
so
different.
I mean, and technologically, we're actually like at that point where we're able to do that. We can hook somebody up to an RMRI machine and
Yeah.
basically let them experience different music, different chords, different frequencies, and map the places that light up and are stimulated within their brain. So we could actually, just reverse engineer that and create different chords that literally just directly create emotional responses within the brain without having to transform that into the analog medium, of a sound frequency that vibrates the eardrum of the person, who then takes that and converts that back into an electrical signal that stimulates the inside of their brain and creates the image of this response that they've kind of designed our brain has been designed to interpret into like
Mm-hmm.
sound. I mean, I know this is getting out there.
No, I love it. This is the perspective of an artist and your
Mhm.
viewpoint, and it would be cool to see that come to life.
Yeah, so in this dream I'm just up there playing, and the people in the crowd have these things on and they're just being stimulated
Yeah.
by this amazing, I don't know whether to call it music. It's like
You know what it
people
reminds
music.
me of? It reminds me of. Have you ever seen the movie Barbarella?
Yes, yeah, it is very, yeah. Maybe that's some of the imagery of it for sure. Yeah.
And they're like
Yeah.
whatever, and it's like passing signals and stuff. I know that was like it's a very sexual movie, but
Totally.
the
I
same
mean,
conceptual idea. I feel
absolutely.
like even that was a well ahead of its time.
For sure. So, I mean, if I'm having these dreams, that means it's out there in the zeitgeist.
Ready.
So
It's
I'm sure other
cultivating
people are
for
thinking
you.
about this too. So, you know, part of me is like, I shouldn't have given away my big idea because someone else can see it. But
No, but
I'm
nobody
sure
can do it the way that you're going to do it.
exactly.
Your perspective is so unique, and there's only one of you. So
I've
even if
got a
somebody else does it in a different way,
that's only one of my weird dream visions. So
I love it.
even if
I love it.
somebody does, I got a few more. So
Well, tell me, what is something that you've learned throughout your career that has really stuck with you? Some advice or just something that you've learned that really has impacted your work and helped you push through to, the next level and the next level of what you're trying to go towards.
I think just having somebody that you respect, really critique, your work from a true perspective,
Mhm.
I I think just being very flexible and open to
Yeah.
different. Yeah, I mean, I part of me likes this. I think a lot of artists like to just say like, this is what I want to make, and no one can tell me, what how it should be because it's just my. And I think that's an important aspect of art for different artists, but you know communicating with people as well,
Mm-hmm.
is another really important aspect. And every artist has their own balance of that. And for some people, just, what they enjoy about art making is just being able to express their own inner vision
Yeah.
and just say what they want to say, and
Mm-hmm.
that's where it ends, and that's enough. And the commerce side, or the no one even needs to see it, and if that's the way it works for them, that's totally okay, and no one can tell them any differently.
Mm-hmm.
And for other artists that want to kind of create that, but then an important aspect for them is having other people like see the work and receive it and
Mm-hmm.
interpret it the way the symbols and the things, it may mean one thing to the author of the work, but you know they're just offering up like this stimulus, and the work isn't completed until another person experiences it through their own whole system of the things that are meaningful to them, their genetic makeup, their experiences in life that trigger them when they see that, like, what does this symbol mean to them in their life. And it might be a completely different thing than the intention of the artist, and I really like that process too. I've learned to embrace that a lot more. For a time I was more in the
It's
former
for us
thing.
all. We all struggle with it, you
Yeah,
know?
just my own world, and I even had a hard time selling things and parting with different things. But I've
Yeah.
moved more and more towards a direction now where I really enjoy watching other people interact and hearing what they interpret from the piece and what it means to them. And I love that dialogue. And sometimes hearing criticism or advice from other people, if your work is so out there that like people can't really relate to it, um, that's one thing. But like, when people make suggestions about, oh, I would love it if this did this over here, that I become more open to that, and I try to like,
Yeah.
everybody has a cool point of view, and I try to like use everybody as a teacher, and everybody, sometimes people that you know are the most trained in the art are the most limited because they're so locked into different traditions or the way things have been done or what's worked for other people before.
Yeah.
And sometimes the most important, obvious, helpful suggestions come from people that are just they don't really have any training, and they just sort of
Mhm.
say, hey, I think it would be cool if this happened. And you're
Yeah.
like,
It's a third
that
perspective.
would be cool.
Yeah.
So they're not limited by all this indoctrination. So I
Yeah.
try to take advice from everywhere, and stay open to it. And I can be really stubborn and dogmatic in my own thinking too. So I try to go that extra mile to
Yeah.
open myself up to other people's suggestions.
Well, you did an amazing job with mine. I get that that real aspect of like the escapism, but also the love between nature and city, and you expressed it purely in what you did for me. So I love my piece. It's like right there.
Oh, thank you. That makes me so happy. I mean, that's kind of dialogue I
Yeah,
love to hear.
I love
Just
that.
making people's lives, bringing joy to people's lives, or making the environment around them and their little world like
Mhm.
more comfortable, or adding some good energy to that. I mean, it's so meaningful and it's so wonderful. And the good side of social media and the internet is the fact that we can have this conversation
Yeah.
right now and share these ideas and share them with other people, and to be able to
Having
you
it
know
real and raw, and just
yeah.
this is natural. This is not something that we're trying to you know
Mhm.
cover or mask with something else. Last question I want to ask you before we sign off is, what is one quote that Ben Moon wants to leave with the universe and other artists? Like, what is your one quote, one advice that you want to leave for other people?
I would just say that you know I'm just a fan of all creativity. I'd say for anybody, whether you have dreams or hopes of pursuing art or a creative line of way of being, professionally, or even if you're just somebody that, you know, is in a completely different field professionally, I think just as human beings, our creative impulse, I think we're fundamentally creators.
Yeah.
And I think it's just healthy to exercise our creativity in some form or another. And it doesn't have to be drawing or painting or playing music. It can just be in the way we relate to our family and friends. It can be playing, it can be cooking, it can be taking a walk and just appreciating, you know, the beauty of nature. I just think that, you know, as human beings, we're fundamentally creators, and I think that should be looked at the same way people look at it as exercising and keeping our body, you know, healthy, keeping our mind healthy, you know, keeping our spirit healthy. I think, you know, exercising our creativity, I find that even in things that don't seem like they're related to the creative field, they bleed over into, you know, that. So just, you know, coming up with something creative in one area can help you actually get better ideas in other areas that aren't, you know, creatively, you know, immediately associated with creativity. So I think it's really healthy, and I think it's important for kids. So I'm also a big advocate of, you know, I give a lot of instruction for young people, developing their ability to express their creative impulse. And I think that's just something that really serves everyone, you know, throughout our lives. So I would just encourage everybody to just find a way to just use your imagination and play around, and don't be so concerned with the end result. That's actually the least important thing, you know, the process of just using your imagination and playing around and having some fun and trying some stuff out. I think if you give it a try, you'll find that, you know, it makes your life a happier experience. So that's what I would suggest, and that's
I
what I
want to
try.
start doing that every single day, and in new ways, and not just in art. I'm going to try to start doing that in like every other aspect. I love that.
Good.
Well, thank you so much for coming on this episode. You know, I've enjoyed learning more about you and about your history and about like where you've started in art, and how, of course, now I know where you're at, where you're evolving, and I love all of your work. So let everybody know where they can heart you, like you, subscribe, follow everything benmoon.
Well, thanks so much, Cassie. It's been a pleasure to talk to you today. You can kind of see more of my work. My Instagram is moonben, @moonben, and my website is moonben.com. So check out some of my stuff, the latest things I've been working on, and some of the music. And get in touch with me if you're interested in anything. And I look forward to hearing from you guys. And you know, thanks again for having me. It's been so much fun.
Thank you so much for being here. I've enjoyed our conversation.
Me too.
Well, thank you everyone for joining us on this episode of the Design Therapy. If you want to learn about other voices and content creators and everybody who's been on, please make sure that you're following the Design Therapy on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and also at my website at thedesigntherapy.co. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you around next time. Bye.